Let's now move for a riveting panel discussion on advancing cybersecurity and managing risk in the age of digital health transformation. Our lineup of experts is nothing short of extraordinary, featuring the likes of Mr. Vijay Pawar, the powerhouse behind Dell Technologies, Mr. Ganesh Chellappa, the driving force behind support services at ManageEngine, and Dr. Makarand Sawant, the vice president of IT at Sahyadri Hospital, and Kumar KV, CIO Narayana Hospitals. This panel will be moderated by Mr. Aravind Sivaramakrishnan, CIO of Karkinos Healthcare. Remember, in the age of digital transformation, cybersecurity is not just an option, it's a necessity. So let's dive in and uncover the keys to safeguarding our digital future. Welcome our panelists and moderator on the stage.
Kumar, thank you for the wonderful session and a lot of information in terms of how data, what types of data we collect in healthcare, then how do we look at a response plan, and how do we approach it overall. So I'm going to first think Dr. Sawant to you. We've been approaching, as a hospital CEO. How's your organization, looking at approaching the aspect of, not the technology, but how are you looking at quantifying the risk, and what is it that is important, super important to you, and risks that are not important? How do you look at what approaches your organization?
Okay, so in our hospitals, we have done a risk assessment, and what we feel is there are three pillars to ensure that security is there in the organization. First is people, then the processes, and then the technology. So people are the weakest link till now when we see the risk assessments, because when we do an evaluation of the people who are actually operating the systems, the knowledge of those people in terms of how to interact with external communications like emails or WhatsApp communication or whatever, that is little challenging. So a lot of education will have to go in all of the employees to make them understand that external threats are, we are vulnerable to external threats, and any casual approach towards that will actually end up having a major breach of the entire organization information. Second is processes. So being an hospital, there are already ground level challenges where processes cannot be followed as is defined in the books, right? So a lot of deviations happen on day-to-day basis. So the deviation should be acceptable by the management, and proper risk assessment has to happen while accepting those risks in the process deviations. And technology, of course, is something where we need to put in more investments and ensure that the digital record that we are handling, we are owners of the record because we are acquiring that in our systems. And while we exchange it with the other systems, we will have to ensure that there is appropriate assessment happening with whom we are interacting, external or internal. Whether external, the systems are secure enough for us to expose our information to those systems, and internally whether we are safeguarding the internal threats that may be exposed to the data. So all of that assessment in detail is required, and it is a continuous process. It will not happen that you do an assessment for 1 year and then you take 2-3 years to implement, and then after 2 years you again do an assessment. It is a continuous process because the threat vectors are changing. We are getting exposed to external devices like mobile apps. Websites are being accessed by external employees and vendors. So all of that external exposure is there. So the threat vectors will keep increasing going forward. So continuous improvement plan has to be there, and continuous assessment has to be there. So at least once in a quarter, there has to be an assessment done to see what are the type of attacks that we have been tackling with, and what are the effective solutions that we have, or whether we need to upgrade those.
Okay. That's thing. I'm going to move to you, Vijay. We're seeing the provider side of it. The three of us kind of represent the hospitals and all of that. But from your organization's perspective, and I'm seeing it in two parts. One is, as Dell, you're a large organization, and because of the nature of work that you do with the hospitals, there's a lot of our information that you are privy to, and you are processing. You are not the processor of it, but you're in contact with it in some format, including whether you're managing our data centers in different aspects of it, how you look at it and all that, or you're maintaining some of it, or you're just providing support for some of it, or in some cases also, and I'm going to take this thing, even if you're in the pre-sale cycle, there's a lot of information that you gather to the organization before you submit appropriate solutions. As an organization that is, servicing the healthcare sector, how are you looking at healthcare related risks, healthcare related privacy and cybersecurity concern in terms of how you manage yours and how you are responsibly managing some of us also?
Okay, so let me first thank you for inviting us here. Really appreciate that. Mr. Kumar had a very good presentation on how do you manage the cyber risks and talking about a lot of different aspects of identify the data, protect, detect, and recover. We have seen that most of the customers today are having the strategy which is based on prevention, right? Which basically means that we spend a lot of dollars and monies in building the cyber security per se, which is there for many years today, right? The objective of these cyber security is to prevent the attacks, right? When you're talking to a lot of customers today in the industry, we observed that the cyber resiliency, which is what the need of an hour today, because cyber security has to advance to the cyber resiliency, right? In order to ensure that in case of the attack happens, I would like to say that today the cybersecurity has been changed from what if the attack happens, it's to like when the attack happens, are you really capable and you are geared up with the solutions to recover the data? That's about the cyber resiliency is all about we're talking about. Today, many organizations, we have done the survey using our Global Data Protection Index with 1,000 customers, where we have seen that almost 75 customers, they said that we are not geared up with, in case the breach happens, we are not able to recover it. We do not have that confidence. Now that says everything, which means that rather than spending money, of course, spending money on cybersecurity is equally important, but then we have to look at in the verge of advanced sophisticated attacks today, because cyber criminals are really leveraging on the same technology that we are using today. Talk about AI, ML, right? They are using those technologies in order to build the attack, in order to execute those codes, and the dwell time, which is like the time where criminals are there in the network for a month or so, right? Which is unidentified by the security tools, right? In spite of having all those security tools that we have, of course, probably I would, if I say that the 100+ tools that we have normally in organizations for cybersecurity, they fail, and the criminals know that they are able to circumvent, they're able to break those breaches, and they can execute the attack. Now, if the attack happens, what next? You need to have a solid foundation for cyber recovery, right? Which is always the ignore part of the NIST framework that we talked about earlier. So Dell Technologies really having this portfolio, which is basically around the data protection and cyber resiliency, right? Which basically helps customers to really ensure that in case of any adverse attack happens, we can give that confidence to the business, to the board of directors that data can be recovered. And it is not like a vertical specific, like healthcare, it is equally important for any of the businesses today. You talk about financial institutions, you talk about corporate sectors, data is oil today. And in terms of healthcare, it is more than oil because it basically relates with the life of the humans, right? So it's equally important that we need to have the strong cybersecurity posture by building the strong cyber resiliency for our organizations. And that's where the Dell technology is actually poised for. And we have the innovations in this space for last several years. And we're helping customers.
Ganesh, I'll come to you next. And there was a very interesting presentation done by your colleague prior to lunch. Now, again, just like a similar question as what I posed to Vijay. See, ManageEngine you kind of got the information of almost the majority of organizations, because most of the tickets go right into your service application. So somebody who is able to understand how an organization works, if they get wind of that sort of an information, they'll be able to figure out what's this organization about and what's going, and then they can start working on that. That's one aspect of it. And then I'm also seeing that as an organization, the larger Zoho organization, you got various bouquets of solutions connected, some not connected because that's the requirement of the business and all of that. Now when you are looking at the healthcare sector, what do you put as your priorities when you're looking at protecting your own organization? First part is protecting your own organization so that you are not unduly exposed and thereby you are liable to it. That's one part. And what parameters do you put so that you protect your provider customers also?
So that's a good question. You also touched upon a point, right? So how we secure our organization, because I've been with Zoho Corporation for about 17 years now. So the year I joined, I think we were about 300, 350 odd people. Now today we are like 15,000 strong, right? So most of the solutions that we have in our portfolio, we built it because at some point we were in need of it, right? So for example, if you take a SIM solution, when we were growing in numbers, we needed a solution to gather our logs and to gain valuable insights. So that gives us the expertise to actually field test our solutions before we start selling it to other customers. And Vijay had a good point about resilience, right? So when it comes to healthcare, our suggestion would be to look at cybersecurity at a layered approach. So from a ManageEngine perspective, we focus on 3 core pillars. First would be the cybersecurity part of it, the second would be compliance part of it, and third would be automation part of it. So you will need all 3 of this, especially the healthcare sector would need all 3 of it if they are looking to have a solid foundation and a framework to protect against the cyber threats and also to scale further moving through the years. And there's no one size fits all because we have different type of organizations even in healthcare, but it's a good idea to look at cybersecurity from the components point of view. So I can break down the components and say there are probably 5 components that involves. So first would be your users. You would have internal users, external users, vendors, consultants. Then you have devices, right? People use laptops, mobile phones, apps, and all of it. And then third, you have your network. All the organizations would have their own internal network or external network, cloud, and all of it. And then you have applications. So vendors like ManageEngine, you would have procured different applications from different vendors. And then finally, you have data. So if you actually look at cybersecurity, these are the 5 components. And if you can authorize and authenticate any interaction happening between these 5 components, you have 99.9% reduced the cyber attack surface. So there is very, very minimal chance of your organization being breached in terms of cybersecurity. And our solutions are basically catered towards that objective, to be able to protect your infrastructure against the cyber threats, especially with the rise of large language models and generative AI. We see the type of attacks, the traditional cyber attacks growing exponentially in both quality and quantity. So if you were to protect your organization, you would have to have a more layered, structured approach. And also cybersecurity frameworks, principles will come in handy, like least privilege model or zero trust network architecture. So our solutions are built with those frameworks in mind.
Kumar, I'm going to come to you and probably embarrass you with a direct question. What's the revenue of your organization?
It's around 5,000 crores.
5,000 crores. So 250 crores is about what? I think 5% of 5% of this. So what's your strategy now to protect that 5% of the revenue? Because that's what DPDP says. It's slapping a 250 crores straight. It's good to know that a healthcare institution in India has got a 5,000 crore revenue, because lots of I think Combined institutions, a majority of them will not touch 250 crores even as a total revenue. And then we are talking of a fine of 250, irrespective of the number. In terms of managing that risk, so 250 crores is clearly a board conversation. It's no longer a solution conversation. It's no longer a thing in terms of how you're looking at your culture and all of that. It's a larger board because it's 5% of your revenue. And that's for every instance. And that means that the more number of instances there are, it becomes a larger thing. And now you're answerable to your shareholders. In terms of managing the risk, how are you looking at approaching this 250 crore let me call it a problem at this point in time, and securing your organization and building that confidence inside?
I think the first thought of even getting fined for 250 crores, I think many enterprises are really sweating about it because that's what is written in the law, in the law that has been passed. But we hope there is some modification to it, right? Because it's too big an amount, right? But then it also shows the seriousness of the government, saying that you have to take data breaches very seriously, right? So now that this being a board conversation, right, and privacy is a pretty, is new to India, right? The law, in terms of data principle or data fiduciary, the data subject, all these terms are new because we have always been saying that chalo Aadhaar card de do, PAN card de do, license de do, we basically collect Xerox copies of that, soft copies of that. I think the first thing is, from a board standpoint, if you're basically talking about data breach is going to cost us, a fine can basically get 250 crores, we say that what data are we collecting? Whether the data that we are actually collecting can we put the right controls to then protect it, right? Say, if I collect, let us say, Xerox copies of their, we shouldn't do that. We will never do that. The other copies or PAN card or whatever it is, right? Then we have to ensure that appropriate controls. Let's say rather than collecting Aadhaar, you basically, establish a contract with an Aadhaar sub-agency and do the Aadhaar verification, or basically do to the ABA ID verification. There are various means. So while the board basically gives that mandate saying that please do what it takes to ensure that we meet the, we basically comply to the controls mandated by the law, then we understand what the risk is, right? When you talk about privacy risk, right? There are several areas in a privacy risk, right? Visibility over privacy information, the people-related privacy risk, the data impact assessments. So we understand these areas very well. We map out these areas, understand what are the current controls that are actually there and what the law basically requires, do a gap assessment and see how we can actually fix that in a structured manner. Believe me, we can't do this in 3 months. We can't do this in 6 months. It's an 18 to 24 month journey that we have to take. But now, while this will take 18 to 24 months, we have to put other compensating controls to ensure that a breach doesn't happen and we don't end up paying that large amount of fine, right? So one, we have to understand the data that we actually collect, whether we really require the data. Once we process the data, what controls that we basically put in at various phases, what are the, and then it's a roadmap, right? What controls we put in, maybe after 6 months, improve those controls and learn from those mistakes. And then over a period of time, as controls basically, mature, how do we then handle data deletion or data purging? Now, in medical, it is basically like a holy grail, right? We can't touch any data because we are sitting on a gold mine. Data has to be there infinitely. But then we as healthcare providers have to understand that not every data is important. Can we summarize the data and take that at a data warehouse level and not have that entire data? Then we have to see what data needs to be deleted after understanding what the law basically says, right? They say 10-year retention is what is eventually coming into. I think if we follow these strategies, we can definitely strive to avoid that, that larger fine. But then it's a significant, journey that every enterprise have to take to guard themselves.
Perfect. Now, to both Vijay and Ganesh, the same question, and Vijay, I'll probably start with you. When your customers are coming to you, and obviously I'm one of your customers, so clearly we are lost. So it's not like we're going to be too intelligent. What would you advise your customers to ask of you when you're looking at cybersecurity and risk management? What is it that you would encourage them to ask of you? Given, obviously, it's your portfolio is there, you know what's there, but how would you guide us to actually get the best out of you?
Okay. So, you know what? It starts from the foundation, the fundamental, like, as we talked about that, for any eventuality, you need to have a data protection in place, right? Now, if you look at the overall IT infrastructure, we have modernized with a lot of advanced techniques and tools and products that we have available. But if you look at most of the customers, they are still using the old legacy way of data protections, right? So what we need to do is we need to first look at how do we modernize the data protections by way of bringing the zero trust architecture in data protections so that we can have the role-based access, we can have a least access given to you. It can be starts with the data immutability. Immutability is something like ensure that data cannot be overwritten, cannot be modified when you write the backup on the backup devices. Now, why it is important today? Because if you look at the why we have to really look at modern data protection, because cyber criminals today know that if they have to be successful in their motivations and if they have to get the ransom from you, they have to ensure that your backup infra is paralyzed, your backup infra is destroyed. So today they have the direct attacks on the backup infrastructure first before they really look at impacting your production systems. And then once they destroy your backup infra, they really can get what they really want to do with, right? So this is very important for organizations today, including healthcare, that we should really have the strong data protection strategy which can prevent the data losses, prevent these kind of attacks, right? That's the first level defense. I mean, as rightly said, it is always the layer of approach, right? Security cannot be single solution, right? You have to really build the strong data protection foundation platform, and on top of it, we need to build the cyber recovery vault, or so-called, if you heard about the air gap solutions, right? That's where it will help the organizations to really recover back in case of the advanced attack happens. So it starts from building the foundational platform with the next generation data protection solutions, right? Which basically has built-in RBAC access, immutability. Immutability is important because you need to ensure that data cannot be destroyed, and this immutability has to be certified by the regulatory agencies like SOX or HIPAA, right, or Sec 17 for a financial organization. So you need to ensure that you use those solutions in order to protect your data on premises, whether it is cloud or on premises. And the next layer, or the second step that you can actually do it, build the cyber recovery vault so that in the advanced attack, you can really rely on that copy which has been analyzed by the solutions, because it is important that we have to also use the AI/ML solution in analyzing the copy in your backup solutions. Okay, it's not only in the production, because imagine that anything can be in the production can be compromised. Now, if that happens, you can rely on the cyber copy which is in the cyber bunker or so-called cyber recovery air gap solution, so that we can rely on that solution to really recover back and sustain back. Yeah.
Ganesh, the same question to you, but I'll also add one more layer to it. And since a lot of the ManageEngine solutions are also used for GRC controls, they do a good job at managing those. So again, what would you advise your customers to ask of you so that we can get the best out of the solutions and thereby ensure that we are not treading on areas of weaknesses?
Yeah, so I mean, not just ManageEngine as a vendor. If you are a healthcare organization's head or a decision maker who has decided to invest in cybersecurity solution, there are some pointers that I can suggest. The first point would be with regards to cybersecurity, there are different type of solutions available in the market. Now, if you go on procuring different solutions from different vendors, It is like trying to operate a business with 25 different teams that are like hired and nurtured across different continents. So it's not going to work. So my first suggestion would be to look at a vendor who can actually provide you the entire platform or an ecosystem for your entire cybersecurity needs. Point number two, I would also look at how that particular vendor's infrastructure is protected. Do they use their own solutions, sort of like eat their own dog food method? Where are they headquartered? Because gone are the days where you have to, heavily invest in software that are predominantly built in the western part of the world. I would like to think India as the software headquarters. So you have more robust and reliable solutions that are coming out of India these days. So that is another factor that I would obviously look at, because I am much closer to the vendor. I am also culturally connected to the vendor. They would be able to understand my pain points much better rather than having to explain it to any other vendor in the market. Those are some factors. But when it comes to GRC controls, I would go back to saying, have a layered approach. More than investing, like cybersecurity is one area where you cannot just throw money at it and try to get that problem solved. It's not going to happen. You have to have a security hygiene as a practice within your organization. That comes with a lot of training and knowledge and a little bit of investment in having an ongoing process where you have periodic training for your staff and members, be it nurses or doctors or other representatives, even for pharmaceutical industries. Because with the rise of this digital transformation comes the negative aspects of it, right? So you can go to any local kirana and just procure solutions, but just scanning your phone, but at the same time, you could lose your bank account the same way too. So it has its own negative. So I think it's a good time to start having a practice. Organizations should actually come up with a policy for just having their staff trained in cybersecurity. Having some self-learning courses, having them go through some useful content would go a long way. I mean, this would be more crucial than actually selecting the right product or investing money in procuring the right cybersecurity framework and all that. Because at the end of the day, the software is as good as it is, but the weakest link is going to be the human link, right? So we have to protect that first.
Arvind,
yeah.
one point I think, one is many partners, when they actually come to us, let's say to you, to me, or to Makarand, many of them I have not seen people ask, what's the problem statement, or what's the use case, or what are you trying to solve, right? But then it is purely focused from a product standpoint. I think partners have to ask that question, saying that, what problem are you trying to solve, rather than we have this product, we would want to basically, do you want to explore that, right?
Absolutely. Solving a problem or what we're trying to, because a bouquet of solutions will be perfect, but it's just not solving our thing.
And the second thing, what the market actually is, there are certain enterprises which basically say, go for the platform approach.
Yes.
Right? And then there is another divergent thought saying that do best in breed or best in context, right? Or best in context also, because there can be certain providers who may be extremely good in healthcare solutions, but not focusing maybe on manufacturing or anything. So if there is so various theories are actually floating, whether to go all in with the partner and completely marry into the entire platform, or you basically marry multiple solutions that are there.
Dr. Sawant, I'm going to actually pick a point from what Ganesh mentioned. I think the weakest link is the human. And yes, we got a plethora of external threat, but the biggest problem is the insider threat. What our people do. How are you approaching training and orientation of the vast healthcare staff? Because the healthcare staff are blue collar, they are white collar, they are of different backgrounds, different priorities, what matters to them, what is of interest and importance to them. So you have a wide range of people. How are you managing training?
See, basically, first and foremost is we need to ensure that there is a continuous monitoring happening and analysis happening of what are we getting attacked with, right? And what are the preventive measures that we need to have with the people on ground. Accordingly, we'll have to design the training programs for these users. We'll need to educate them. Maybe even a simple flyer which talks about the kind of attacks that we are facing and some preventive actions that the end user can take to ensure that he does not fall prey to such attacks. That may also help. So we generally do a lot of flyers across for the organization, for all users, so that they are aware of what is happening, what kind of attacks may come to them in form of email or SMS or maybe a telephony call itself. And somebody may want to appear as if a CFO is talking to them or a CEO is talking to them, asking them to do something which usually otherwise as a process, a top person from the organization may not communicate directly to the ground level staff, right? So that kind of education is very important. So they know that this kind of communication cannot come from our management directly to us. It may come, but it may come via the reporting managers or supervisors. So that kind of education is required, because the moment they see that kind of communication, they actually get into a panic mode. They think that my superior, the top boss, is asking me to do something, and out of that panic, they try to do it ASAP without thinking whether it is a genuine communication, the person who is asking is actually his boss or not. So that kind of education is required, and we generally do a lot of email communications, or when the induction happens, we have some sliders available where we tell the new employee who is coming on board that these kind of issues can be faced and you need to immediately report it to your authorities and to IT if such kind of communication is coming. Never act directly without verifying the communication.
Kumar, sometime back you were mentioning to me about phishing simulation that you had done in your organization. Can you elaborate in terms of what you did and why did you do that, and what sort of learnings came out of it?
I think, thanks, Aravind. So the awareness part of it, right? One, we basically do flyers like Dr. Makarand was saying, then multilingual ones, maybe in Kannada, Malayalam and all that. But then the phishing simulation basically proves how vulnerable people are, right? So imagine we basically did an investment proof, simulation. Basically crafted a nice email using AI, and sent it to 500, 600 people, and understood who basically opened the link, who basically reviewed the email, who basically submitted data, and after maybe once they, and then if they press login, it says that you've been phished, right? So I think it forms a very important part of the security awareness sessions, right? So why? Because unless and until people are put through a specific exercise, right, people will not understand, the gravity of the situation, right? Now, if they have been phished, now they will be extra careful, to ensure that next time when they spot somebody entering into a restricted area, or next time somebody asks a password, right? That would basically, they would basically flag that. So that is very important from a simulation. So simulation will actually help us to spread awareness. Simulation is not for, shaming people, but it is also for telling people, saying that you are vulnerable. You need to relearn the security awareness course and ensure that you don't fall prey to it. But we also give a personal angle to it. Now, having gone through this exercise, imagine if you have done this for your personal bank account, what would have happened? Now that would basically hit very hard. It would definitely resonate to every person that is actually there, right? And help them change their mind as how they look at security and take appropriate measures.
Thank you, Kumar. We've got just under 3 minutes to go. Any questions from the audience? We can take possibly 1 or 2 questions and then we'll close up. Including something pretty controversial, that cybersecurity is not a risk at all.
So we have to do a simulation for the delegates over here.
Yeah. We can do a simulation. We can send them shares of almost all companies and ask them to click on the happy link. Yes.
So the large corporates you've been dealing, that cybersecurity mock audits you can do, or the training of the staff you can do. Imagine the crowd or the hospitals with 50 beds. Is outsourcing a better solution, or in-house development is a right solution?
See, I'm not going to think whether an organization has to look at its priorities, and you'll have to look at your investment patterns, and you'll have to look at where your skills lie. So it's not about outsourcing is better or this. If you are not able to have or maintain that talent, then you may have to do that. If it's too much of a burden for you to maintain that talent because a 50-bed hospital will have a very different focus, then it is better for you to outsource. So you'll have to make that call based on where your priorities are, and you will have to reevaluate this probably every 1.5 years, because your priorities would have changed, your other constraints would have changed. So it's not just make it a one-time decision. And people like to say we've entered into a 5-year contract, 7-year contract. I would say don't cross 15 months, reevaluate around that time.
Just to add here, no matter whether you have internal staff or outsourcing staff, security best practice has to be followed, right? The best practices for computing, best practice for emailing has to be followed, because according to the IDC study says that majority of the breaches happen. It is not because of the security loopholes. It is all because of the phishing attacks, right? And that has caused opening one phishing mail can really cause havoc in the organization. So it's important to have really best practices followed for the emailing as well.
Vijay rightly said, I don't think outsourcing or insourcing is going to solve the problem. It's because of the bad actor inside, the person doing it. So it's putting that culture that each one of us are responsible, irrespective of what are the techniques you're using to solve these problems.
Yeah, and yeah, to
Narayana Health, I presume most of your clinicians, do they, I don't know, I'm just asking you, do they personally, physically input the clinical data, A? B, if so, are they sensitized to the average, I'm not talking of a specialist in IT, the general residents, clinicians, consultants, senior consultants, how much are they involved in physically doing this, and what is the level of awareness among a practicing doctor?
Thank you, doctor. I think very valid question. So today we have mandated our clinicians to basically do EMR. The compliance or basically to input data, we have seeing around 85 to 87% EMR compliance.
Do they do it themselves, or do they have a physician assistant?
Sir, there are certain cases there are physician assistants who basically input the data, and there are physicians who are super focused to enter data by themselves. In all the widgets they populate very, very religiously and very lovingly, if I can put it that way. Now, in terms of awareness, I think they better understand, the cybersecurity risk, because they understand what the landscape is. They understand all these phishing attack and WhatsApp attack that is actually there. We have actually done a lot of security awareness exclusively for our doctors, but it is always a work in progress, sir. If you ask me whether the awareness is at 99%, 100%, absolutely not. I would say somewhere around 60%, 70% people are actually aware about it. So if a WhatsApp fraud basically comes in, right, they are able to quickly flag that. If somebody is basically asking them, or creating an urgency and asking them for bank account numbers or MRN number, they immediately call the IT. I think that level of awareness is actually there, and considering they are in the line of duty and the work that they actually do, at least they flagging this itself is a big thing. But I'm very sure that our clinicians will, upskill themselves in cybersecurity, provided we as cybersecurity practitioners approach the clinicians and tell them in a way which they will understand. So put the personal angle, put the clinical angle, so that and make it easy for them. And partly the responsibility is also on our cybersecurity practitioners to help our clinicians understand it in a much more simpler way.
There's only one thing that I caught from Kumar's response. And that probably makes Narayana Health a very unique organization. He said the doctors lovingly put the records into the EMR. So that I would say is a unique answer. That brings us to the close. We've run out of time. Ganesh, Vijay, Dr. Sawant and Kumar, thank you very much. Thank you for being a patient audience, and back to you.
I had a question. If
You have a question?
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, please. Hello. So, like we talk about artificial intelligence, lot of complexities, machine learning that we are actually integrating into our healthcare to transform it. But with enhancing the cybersecurity and other security challenges that we are doing with artificial intelligence and machine learning, it also present with some risks, high risks, if we integrate artificial intelligence there. So, how do organizations integrate or leverage these technologies with mitigating with potential threats?
That's a good question. Couple of months back, an incident happened. I just wanted to let the guys know. So Air Canada got sued because in their website they had a chatbot. A passenger basically used the chatbot to book a flight ticket and he was offered a discount, but it was misinformation. So after he had the journey and came back and tried to avail the discount, he was informed that it was wrong information accidentally given by AI. But the court ruled in favor of the person, asked them to refund the ticket and basically honor the discount provided. So the point is, if you are going to adopt a technology, whether it is AI or machine learning or deep learning, it is on you. So the onus is on you. So you are not going to, on day one, hook it into your production and make sure it works, right? So you have to take it different layers, stages. You will have to have a proof of concept, a UAT stage, a testing stage. Then you will have another layer of testing before you take it into production. That is point number one. And point number two is, like 10-15 years back, security was expensive because you can either choose security or convenience. So especially in healthcare, the leadership team has to drive this message that those are not the days anymore. Today you don't have to choose between security versus convenience. You can have both. And that is where the digital transformation journey actually comes from, right? So you have robust solutions like AI and ML. They can actually be helpful in making the life easier for the healthcare representatives, at the same time keep the security required.
In healthcare, it's always, advised to go after things that are natural. So AI also, the answer is in the question. You go for something artificial and fully trust it. God be with you. Thank you very much.